The Colts' most underrated player is finally getting his dues, but not only that, but throughout this offseason, he's getting some more help. All that and more on this episode of Sports Talk Indy. What's going on? I'm Elijah from Sports Talk Indy, where we cover all things Colts every single day. And if you're new to the community, I'm not going to give you the whole like and subscribe thing yet. Wait a minute, wait 3 minutes, wait 5 minutes. And if you like this video or like any of our other videos, yeah, subscribe and become a part of this community. We'd love to get you involved and like get you here. But the most PFF released this article of each team's most underrated player. And honestly, I was surprised by this answer. But then once they broke it down a little bit, it made more sense. This year, for our most underrated player, it is Colts pass rusher Samson Ebukam. This was a new signing for us. The Colts really didn't do a lot in the free agency last year or the year before. They're just not big free agency spenders, as we saw with this year. But the Indianapolis Colts have dedicated lots of money and draft picks to the defensive line, and the Indy's latest addition, obviously, is Leatu Latu. But that doesn't mean you should ignore the rest of the talent on the roster. Pro Football Focus recently signaled out Samson Ebukam as the most underrated player on the team's roster. Ebukam first signed with the Colts in 2023 and put up career-high numbers in his first year in the blue and white. And if you're like me, and honestly, like we looked at this as a signing to replace Yannick Ngakoue, who moved on and went to the Bears, and I think that's very interesting when you make that comparison because we lost one, gained another, a defender to go opposite of Kwity Paye. But the Colts' Samson Ebukam 2023 Pro Football Focus grade was 83.5, the highest of his career. It's also interesting to know that the Bears' Yannick Ngakoue Pro Football Focus 2023 grade was 39.9. I think this means that this was clearly the best move that Ballard made last offseason. And he didn't make a lot aside from the draft. There wasn't a lot of big signings, wasn't a lot, it just is a typical Ballard winter. His 84.4 Pro Football Focus overall grade ranked 14th among edge rushers and was also Ebukam's highest grade in his career. He has mainly excelled as a situational pass rusher up until now, but he could remain in a featured role as first-round rookie Leatu Latu gets up to speed. Samson Ebukam played among defenders, among the defensive line. He played the second most percentage of snaps. He played over 60% of snaps, while Kwity Paye played. He played third most because DeForest Buckner played 72, but Kwity Paye played 63% of sacks, and then Samson Ebukam played 60%, and then Dayo Odeyingbo played 53%. So he obviously his reps increased, but not only that, but I think that you can see a lot of. He had a career year with the Indianapolis Colts. He spent 2017 through 2020 with the Rams, 2021 through 2022 with the 49ers. Playing almost every single game, every single year, but not really having anything extraordinary, anything super special. But last year, he went from averaging 38 tackles per season to up to 57, which for an edge defender is really good. His solo tackles went from an average of 23 to 39. Assisted tackles went up from an average of 12 to 18. And get this, his sacks went from an average of 4 to 9.5, which again doesn't sound like a lot. When you're talking in terms of like TJ Watt, guys like that, it's guys of that caliber, it's important to note that like we haven't had that. We had the Robert Mathis, Dwight Freeney era, but we haven't had something that dominant since then. But this is where it's even more important. His forced fumble, he had 3 forced fumbles this year, that's pretty much all the stats of note in 2023. And this is all, again, up from his normal. Almost double. Most of those stats are almost double what his stats were averaging before. A lot of this has to do with the Colts' style of defense. The Colts switched from their typical man and cover, but because of the injuries that they face in the backfield, we've talked about that ad nauseum, the term cover 3... they switched to a more cover 3, which means, if you don't know, which means that they're running more zone coverage. They're running more zone coverage, blocking the deep end. And obviously the Colts got burned by that a lot. But I think that this shows that this is why guys like Samson Ebukam and Kwity Paye were able to succeed. The Samson Ebukam and Kwity Paye also had a combined. They had 10. Ebukam had 10 sacks. Kwity Paye had 7.5 sacks. Both were career highs, and the Colts set a record this year as far as sacks goes with 51, which they had never done in the history of the franchise. Now, we also talk a lot about the fact that the pass rush wasn't consistent. It wasn't able to do a lot, and they were able to get, when they got there, it was great. But it wasn't consistent, and that is why the Colts decided to bolster this defensive line this offseason by adding Roquan Davis, by signing Grover Stewart, by signing DeForest Buckner, by locking in Kwity Paye for 2 more years, and Samson Ebukam has 2 more years left on this contract, which is, I think, a great news as you're getting a guy like Leatu Latu his reps and getting him up to speed, which is going to take some time. And I think that the expectation for a lot of us is to see a guy like Leatu Latu just come in and go 100%. But it's going to take a lot of veteran leadership to get that up to speed. And I think that we're in really good hands with guys like Samson Ebukam, Kwity Paye, and being able to go there. But Gus Bradley's defense, like it or hate it, they were able to do a lot just inconsistently. And I think now that a lot of guys are coming back from injuries, a lot of guys are able to do are coming back into this role. You got Dallas Flowers, who's projected to be one of the biggest comeback players or breakout players. I guess you should call him a breakout because he was a rookie last season. But one of the biggest breakout players on defense in the NFL. Like, there's a lot of people who are expecting this Colts defense to really take the next step and to be one of the most dominant forces in football. Again, they were clearly inconsistent. Getting burned by P.J. Walker and the Browns, I think that was one of the most frustrating games that we watched. Getting burned by Derek Carr and the Saints, I think those were 2 of the most what should have been winnable games that ended up being games that we lost late in the season or late in the game, just because of not having a good defense. A guy like P.J. Walker should not tear the Colts apart, but I think having a consistent pass rush, getting Samson Ebukam in year 2, getting a guy like Kwity Paye, depth on this defensive line, Tyquan Lewis, Kwity Paye, Samson Ebukam, and now Leatu Latu, I think is going to be a huge step forward in this Colts pass rush. And again, this is just incredible. An incredible step in the right direction for this Colts team that really, like I said, has been so crazy inconsistent on defense. I think that the key thing that they're looking for is depth, and they added that in the draft. They added that in free agency with the signings, and I think that this should show us that at least Ballard is confident in the guys that he has, and that he still hasn't. I think even myself, I was expecting at this point in the year that we were going to sign some sort of free agent. Justin Simmons and Jamal Adams still is on the market. A guy like that to really add, but it really shows that at least for the moment, Chris Ballard, Jim Irsay, Gus Bradley, Shane Steichen, they're all confident in what this defense is able to do, and it's because of guys like Samson Ebukam. And we'll see what this next season looks like, and if he's able to again capitalize on these great numbers. Leatu Latu is going to take a significant portion of blocks and double teams away, and that's going to open up the field for guys like DeForest Buckner, guys like Samson Ebukam, guys like Kwity Paye, who have always shared the load. I think Leatu Latu is going to draw a lot of attention, and it's going to open up a great field for guys like Samson Ebukam to really thrive and have a great season.